Hello, my amazing algebra half students. This is Mrs. A, and I love math. Today we're doing lesson 58, which is all about decimals, fractions, and percent. And we're going to be seeing equivalent forms of the same thing. So basically right here, I have a rectangle that's divided into 5 equal parts, and I've shaded 1 out of 5 of those parts. But remember, to change 1/5 into a decimal, I need 10 parts. So basically, I'm going to divide it again. And now I have 2 out of 10 parts shaded. So we could make 2 out of 10 parts is the same as 1 out of 5 parts, but 2 out of 10 parts is the same as 0.2, because that 2 is 2/10, which means that. Okay, so then how would I write this same quantity as a percent? Well, I know that I have 2/10. Now, I'm not going to do it, but I could divide this same rectangle into 100 equal parts. And if I did, then 20 of them would be shaded. But let's do it with fractions. Okay, we have 2/10, which we already decided was the same as 1/5. What if I just multiplied the top and the bottom by 100, and now I have 20 parts out of 100, which is 20%. Because remember, percent means parts out of 100. So 20 over 100 is the same as 20%, and 0.2 is the same as 20%. Okay, because if I did add a 0 here after the decimal, I can add as many zeros as I want after the last digit, right? So 20 hundredths is the same as 20%. So we're going to be playing around with changing fractions into decimals, into percents, and back and forth and back and forth. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, our first example, is to change 51 over 100 into a decimal and into a percent. Well, remember that decimals, if I want to take 51 and my decimals there, and I wanted to divide it by 100, that would move the decimal place 2 places back. And I would have 0.51. So we don't have to do long division. We have divided by 100, and that's really easy. So we have 0.51, which is 51. That's the hundredths place. 51 hundredths, 51 hundredths. Okay, so we've already changed it into a decimal, and then to go from a decimal to a percent is very, very easy. We already know that 51 hundredths should be 51%, right? But another very easy way is when I'm changing it to percent, I move the decimal 2 places to the right and stick the percent sign on. So basically 51% means 51 hundredths, which means that. Okay, so to change from a decimal to a percent, we move the decimal 2 places to the right and tack on the percent sign, and we're done. Okay, the next little part talks about just the benefit of having a set of numbers in your head, they calling those reference numbers, to kind of establish a pattern for you that you won't forget. So the fraction form of the example we just used is the set of reference numbers they decided to use for you. So we're going to show you this once, and then you're probably going to be able to do without those reference numbers, because I want you to know the pattern without them, but you can still do it this way and then learn how to do it without the pattern. Okay, so the decimal, remember, the 100 takes the 51 decimal and moves it 2 places to the left, so that's going to be 0.51. And then we take the 0.51 or this one, we can go straight to the percent. To go to the percent from the decimal, we move the decimal 2 places to the right and tack on the percent sign. So that was just the last example we did, and now we're going to use that pattern for this problem to go backwards. Okay, so here we are given a 25%. So this is 25%. And so now the 25%, when we go backwards to the decimal, is we move the decimal to the left to get back from the percent to the decimal. So 0.25, and then 0.25 is 25 hundredths. So we're going to put 25 100ths. The thing we have to remember here is that fractions should be simplified when they can be, and 25 100ths, if I divide the numerator and the denominator by 25, I will get 1/4. So that is the answer to that example number 2, and we will use that pattern a couple more times because that's what this lesson is about, and then you can start doing it without the pattern. Okay, on this one, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put our little pattern here. Our pattern was 51 over 100, and that's the same thing as 0.51. And then when I move the decimal 2 places to the right, that is 51%. So that's my pattern, but I do have a little bit of a problem because 16 is not 100, and this one was 100. How do I turn 1 over 16 into a decimal? Well, I do the long division. So what we'll do is we'll just say 1 divided by 16, and we'll see what that turns into. Okay, 16, I'm going to put a decimal here. 16 does not go into 1 at all, so I'm going to bring down a 0. 16 doesn't go into 10, so that's going to be 0.0. And then I bring down another 0. 16 does go into 100 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36, with a carry of a 3. 6 times 1 plus 3 is 9. Then I get a 4, and then I bring down another 0, and 16 into 40 will go 2 times. Okay, 2 times 16 is 32, which gives me an 8, and then 8/16 is a half, so 0.0625. I ran out of room on my chart. But the decimal is 0.0625, so right here, for my decimal, I will put 0.0625. So how do we get from a fraction to a decimal if the fraction does not have a 10 or a multiple of a power of 10 on the bottom? Well, we divide. 1 divided by 16 gives us 0.0625, and that's the decimal. Now, to turn it into a percent, all we have to do is move the decimal 2 places, just like we did in our pattern. We moved the decimal 2 places to the right and stuck on a percent. Move the decimal 2 places to the right, and we get 06.25. But remember, this 0 is not important. And then we tack on a percent, but I didn't leave enough room. So 6.25%. So we moved the decimal 2 places to the right, and then we dropped the unnecessary 0 and threw on the percent sign, and we are done with that example. Now, the one thing I don't like about what your book is doing is they don't show the percent sign. I would put the percent sign there because that will show you that it is a percent. So basically you want to make sure that your percent sign is there because the percent sign is what makes it correct. The percent sign tells you that the true number is 100, that number divided by 100. So you want to make sure your percent sign is there. And I can see that your book is not putting the percent sign in there. And that's okay because they have percent at the top, but I don't want you to get confused. we are ready for our practice problems. So copy this down. What we're going to do is on the first practice problem, I'm going to use the pattern with you. On the second practice problem, I'm going to do it without the pattern. Okay? So, because you got to get used to doing it without the pattern. But the first one we're going to do with the pattern. So pause your video. Hopefully you did that and you've done the problem. So the first thing we're going to do is write down our pattern, because we said we would use the pattern. And 51/100ths is 0.51, and 51/100ths is 51%. Okay, so now we have a problem because we have 1/8, and that is not a power of 10 on the denominator. So we're just going to divide 1 by 8. So I'm just going to use this slot right here to do the division. And if you are smart, you will memorize this one because this one will be used a lot. So 8 does not go into 1, so we'll put our decimal, but 8 goes into 10 one time. And 1 times 8 is 8. You're going to use this one a lot, so this one you will memorize. All right, subtract 2, bring down another 0. 8 into 20 goes 2 times. And 2 times 8 is 16, which leaves me a 4, which brings out a 40, which goes a 5. Okay, so 1/8 is 0.125, and I want you to memorize that one because you will do it lots and lots and lots. So 0.125 is 1/8, and you shouldn't have to divide it out because you're going to memorize that one. Okay, so we'll take that out so we can have our board back. 0.125, but the big thing is for you to know that anytime you don't know, can't get to the decimal easily like you can here, you're just going to divide. 1 divided by 8, and you're going to do it out in long division, and you're going to get your answer. And then, once you have your decimal, your percent is easy because you just what? Move your decimal 2 places to the right. So we're going to move it to the 12.5. And we're going to tack on our percent sign and call it done. Okay, so now we have one more practice. Okay, our last practice. You may use your reference numbers if you need to, but I'm going to do it without them. Okay, so go ahead and make sure you pause your video and go work this problem before you look at the answer. Okay, so now 0.22 is the decimal. They gave us something different this time. So we are going to have to take 0.22, which is 22 tenths, hundredths, 22 hundredths, and write that out as a fraction. 22 hundredths. But is that the simplified fraction? Or can we divide the numerator and the denominator by 2? So if we divide the numerator by 2, we get 11. If we divide the denominator by 2, we get 50. And 11 over 50 is the simplified fraction, isn't it? So you always want to make sure you put in the simplified fraction. And then, of course, changing to a percent is very easy. We move the decimal 2 places to the right, and we tack on our percent sign, and we are done. And so your decimal and your percent should look very much alike, but sometimes your fraction is going to look very different because if you simplify it, it won't be the same numbers. See, we had 22 and 22, but now we have 11 over 50. So always watch for simplifying that fraction. And now we are done with lesson 58, and it's time for you to go do your homework. And this is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day.